All right, welcome back to the 55 Buick build. So, now that the suspension is all finished, it's time to get into the engine, transmission, drive shaft, brakes, all the rest of the stuff that has to be done, steering, yada yada. So, I guess engine will be next. As already said, and like everybody always says, it's a low buck build, right? Well, this is a low buck build. We're doing this cheap, not so cheap that it's stupid, but saving money and in a way that you can do it yourself too. So we've all seen everybody go to the junkyards and pull motors and get them relatively cheap. I don't generally do that only because it's cheaper for me to buy a whole parts car, sell off what I don't need, and get my engine and transmission or whatever else I can use pretty reasonable. So, just as to show how that works out, take a look at this. This is what's left of a 2001 extended cab short bed pickup truck. I bought this from a guy who bought it just to cut the catalytic converters off and scrap those, sell them. And he sold the bed and the doors and some other miscellaneous stuff. And because he really wasn't, I guess to say, nice about the way he was taking some of the stuff off, the truck doesn't run anymore. Or at least it didn't run when I went and looked at it. It wouldn't even turn over. So this is basically just like pulling an engine out of the junkyard, but it's not in the junkyard. It's in my garage, which I guess some people would call a junkyard because it's a mess. But hey, I know where everything is, almost. But the deal is, anyway, I paid $300 for this truck. Guy had to get it moved out. He didn't want to bother selling any more parts off it. I guess he made his money. He just wanted it gone. So I paid $300 for this truck. I sold the rear axle. I sold the rear window, and it actually had good tires on it, and I sold that stuff. So I sold that stuff and got my $300 back. So this is free. So basically I have a 2001 5.3 here. That's free. It had, I think, you know what? I can't even remember how many miles were on it because I've had too many of these things. I can't remember. I'm going to have to take a look. But I'm going to try to get this thing fired up and just get an idea what kind of shape it's in before I start messing with it. Even if it's a dead player, who cares? You know, it's loaded with good parts, and it still has a 4L60 on it, which I'm not going to use in this situation, but I have it, so I'll go through it and make it a two-wheel drive trans at some point. And I have the transfer case on here, which I'll probably keep a spare for my truck because I drive the same type of truck. So first thing with this pig is I'm going to give it a little vacuuming and air blow, try to clean it up a little bit, pull the spark plugs, make sure it turns over, and go from there. All right, so did the compression test. I don't know if we really had to go over that. You guys know how to do that, I think. Otherwise, there's plenty of videos on it. But basically, this is just a compression tester. You take all the spark plugs out. You have to block the throttle wide open. So I had the throttle back here, and I had just a wrench on the hard stop there. Just stuck an adjustable wrench on it, and that kept the throttle wide open. And then you just thread this in place of the spark plug, crank it over, check the readings. So I did the compression test. My numbers were a little erratic. As you can see, I have generally around 150 to 180. I have one that's reading low around 80 pounds, I think it was. Might have got up to 90. But what I found is a few of these read low, like 90, until I cranked them over a few times and they popped up. So best guess is, because this thing sat for a while, it's been sitting probably over a year, I believe, with the exhaust pretty much open since they cut the cats off. There's a good chance that moisture may have come up through an exhaust valve, got some junk on a valve. You know, the rings may be sticky from sitting. So, you know, these numbers are certainly not all within whatever 5% or whatever it's supposed to be. I don't care about any of them. They all look fine to me, other than that 80 or 90 there. That needs to come up. But I have a feeling if this thing gets fired up and running, once I get some heat into it, I think things will start to loosen up and clean themselves up, because I'm not too concerned, honestly. I have started engines, you know, that have sat for years and years, and once they fire up and run, they're good to go. Like, I have one cylinder here, number 2. You see all the numbers scratched out? It started at 80, then it went to 90, then it went to 100, then it went to 110, then it went to 125. It just keeps coming up as I crank it. So there could be some junk on the valve seat, or the rings are breaking free. So next thing to do, I'm going to gap the plugs and clean up all the spark plugs, gap the plugs. I found that the gap is supposed to be 60 thousandths. So I'll gap them all to 60 with my handy dandy spark plug gapper tool. And put all the coils back on. And I have a remote fuel setup I have to put on here, remote fuel pump, because one thing I found with this truck when I turned the key on is it started dumping fuel all out underneath, so the fuel lines are rotted out on it. Could be one reason why it got parked in the first place, but I have something to get around that. So let me get the spark plugs in, wires in, everybody knows how to do that, and I'll come back. So spark plugs are all cleaned, gapped to 60, reinstalled, plug wires back on, coil packs plugged in, and this is my gas tank. This is what I use when I go to look at old trucks like this that don't run. You go to buy them, and up here in the Northeast, it's pretty common that the fuel lines are rotted out and the truck won't run anymore. Or you buy a truck and it's rotted out and you can't do anything with it. So I made this little toy. All this is a fuel pump module out of an LS truck, Silverado, stuck in a bucket. You know, it's bolted in there halfway with some fuel in it. Fuel lines with factory type snap connectors. So those will snap right onto the fuel lines. Ground wire, just vice grip or bolt to the engine, and a hot lead to hook to the battery. Do that and you have a fuel pump. That's all there is to it. These here are lines not used. Those were for the sending unit for the gas gauge. Don't need that. So I'm going to hook this up and see if this engine will actually run. Alright, so spark plugs are cleaned, gapped to 60 and installed. The wires are back on. Fuel pump setup is here. Rig it up. See it starts. Turn on the pump. Alright. Pump's running. Pump is on. Sounds like the injectors are sticky, but they are starting to free up. So I'm going to keep cranking it a few times, see if I can get away with not having to pull the rails. Tried cranking it over a bunch of times. Sounds like only maybe 3 injectors are working right now. So I think I'm going to have to pull the rails, clean up the injectors. And I forgot to mention yesterday, I had the fuel pump relay pulled when I was doing all this mess. Because like I said, the truck has a rotted out fuel line. So I didn't want the fuel pump on and spraying fuel. So I had pulled that relay right away as soon as I stopped using the factory stuff. And then these are the tools to get the fuel lines disconnected. Sure, people already know that, but I don't know what to put in these videos and whatnot. If you want more detail, no detail, don't even want to watch them, whatever. So we're gonna pull the injector rails out and see if I can figure out which injectors are working, which injectors are not working. All right, so here's where we are. Had removed the wiring harness. That was, I think, 4 or 5 bolts on top of the intake. This is a drive-by cable, so I had to remove the throttle cable and the cruise control cable and the bracket that they were mounted to, move that out of the way. Disconnected the injector plugs on both sides, get that out of the way. Had to take some of the other harness off to get it out of the way. I took off the IAC, throttle position control, alternator, evap connector, just to move the harness out of the way. And it's still kind of in the way, but it's out of the way enough to do what I got to do. Remove the vacuum line for the fuel pressure regulator, so that's out of the way. And I think that's all I need. This was the hose for the PCV, that's out of the way. So I think the next thing all I got to do is loosen up the 4 8mm bolts, 2 on each side, to hold the rails down in the intake. Maybe looking for another set of rails because this is kind of crusty here. It's not leaking, but, well, it's not leaking yet. I feel like if I touch it, it's going to rust. It's going to pop. So I think I'll be looking for another set of rails at the upcoming swap meets because that's crusty. Anyway, so I'm going to unbolt the fuel rails and pry them up, pop the injectors out. I also, before I did this, I took the air hose and blew out all around all the injectors just to make sure nothing falls in the engine when I pop them up in the air. And then once I have the rails out, I'm leaving them connected to my fuel pump assembly. I'm actually going to cycle the injectors one at a time and try to free them up. I've had pretty good luck, at least LT1 injectors, Gen 2s, I've been able to free those up like 99% of the time. I've only done a couple sets of these LS truck injectors, and most of the time I can get those freed up too, but these seem to stick up a lot more frequently than the LS or the LTs. I mean, this truck's been sitting, I guarantee that, for over a year, but it just seems like that's not enough time that these things should be stuck, but they are. All right, so let me get these rails out and we'll go from there. All right, 4 bolts are out. Let's see how easily the rails come out after sitting for 20 years. I'm probably going to break that crossover. I just have a feeling. Sticky. I got moving. Wow. Sticky. Bad feeling about that crossover. That's out. Okay, that side's out. Ooh, she's out of there. All right. Now, can I get it up and out? There's room. Look at that. All right. Make sure nothing's going to fall into the engine. So I can pressurize these rails, and then all I have to do is cycle the injector with 12 volts, see if it sprays, not in my face, and then just give them those little love taps. Alright, so I have a Alright, so I have my pan here, and before I even did anything, I just turned on the fuel pump, and look what I got. I got an injector, looks like number 7, dripping. Without being cycled. None of the back ones are oh, you know what? This is the other way, 2468. This is number 8. No, it isn't. It's number 2 injector. If I could think which way it is sitting here. Number 2 injector is dripping with just the fuel pump cycled and nothing else going on there. And then the next thing will be to cycle these things one at a time. Alright, so let's do some quick tests on these injectors. Now, what I had done with the LT1 injectors in the past, I made a little harness to plug in with a momentary switch just to cycle them. I don't have a spare connector right now for these style injectors, so I'm just going to put some test leads on it and do my best not to short the leads together. Doesn't matter which one is going to positive or negative, it's just a coil. But you don't want to cycle them for, you don't want to hold power on these things for any length of time, you'll burn them up. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch my hot lead off and on just for seconds, just to see if I can get a squirt at a thing. Alright, so I'm going to pressurize the rail and see if I can get this to work. Let's see. Fuel pump's on, and this injector is leaking fuel. Yeah, as soon as you pressurize it, it starts leaking before it even starts working. Not good. When I activate the coil, just by touching the, see the difference? I should get the phone down here. This injector, this is number 2, is a drippy mess. And all I'm doing is touching the my hot lead, not for long, just touching it off and on like that to cycle this injector. And when I do that, you can see it starting to spray. You can also see that it's a leaker. That after I stop, it's still spraying fuel. So there's junk in the pintle. I'm going to try to cycle it Could be just cycling it. Maybe I can clean it out. Otherwise, I'll try soaking it in something. But I already know that that's not good. That will hydrolock your engine. At least I know that one was getting fuel. That cylinder. Alright, hang on here. This is not easy to do with one hand. The others, I just want to see if they even do anything. Since I know I was only hitting on a couple cylinders. See this one right here? I got nothing. Alright, that guy works. And that works relatively well. Now this one is spraying, but it's spraying a stream, which is no good. But I bet it'll clean up once I start getting some fuel through it. But I don't want the stream like that, I want a fog. Alright, this is number one. One works. One's a goodie. Three's dead. Alright, so one's good, three's dead. Five's dead. Yep. So, driver's side, only number one's good. Okay, so I've been working on these injectors, and what I found that I had multiple dead players, and after removing them from the rails, I found all kind of junk on the inlet side. So, blew those out with brake clean, and actually got them to work. So I'm down to 7 of them working. A couple of them are still kind of spraying a stream, but it should run, and hopefully they'll clean up after they get some fresh fuel through them. I'm down to the last one, which was this one here. This is cylinder number 2, which is a leaker. This is the one that was leaking and was not happy, from what I remember. So I'm going to pop it out and take a look at that. And to remove these, all I got to do is, you have this clip right here. You just kind of pry that away, and then you can pull the O-ring down, pull the injector down. The O-rings are a little sticky now because they haven't been out in 20 years, but they go in really easy. So I'm just going to pry this away. I can't do it with one hand. So I'm going to pry this away, pull the injector out, and I'll show you what's in it. All right, we'll scrap that. Reminder, when removing these injectors, bleed the pressure off at the Schrader valve, because I was making the video after I did all the others. I forgot to bleed it, so that injector came out pretty damn fast. It came out quick. So whatever was in the top of that injector got blown out when it shot out of the rail there with whatever 40-50 psi of fuel on it. And yeah, I got some gas on me and I stink now, but whatever. But anyway, I took the injector out, sprayed it out with brake clean, and it doesn't matter. This one's a leaker. I can't get it to shut off. It has a nice spray pattern too, but as soon as I get the fuel pressure in the rails, she's spraying. I don't even have the injector on right now. That thing is just spraying. And I tried cycling it and smacked on it, and it's stuck open. I'm not even going to risk running that in the engine, because if I get it to work right now and it sticks again, bye-bye
I only
engine.
have 8 injectors that sort of work. I don't know. I'm going to find out. I had purchased some from somebody online. First 2 were DOA. Couldn't get them to work. They'll need more investigation. Third one I got works. Seems to spray a lot of fuel. More than the others it seems, but it works. So I don't have 8 necessarily all good ones yet, but I have 8 injectors that look like they sprayed fuel. So I'm going to hook up the fuel pump. I put everything back together, sorta. I didn't bolt down the harness because I don't care. Oh, I gotta, let's see. I got other issues I gotta put on here. Forgot to put the reference on from the fuel pressure. That's a big vacuum leak if I don't do that. Other than that, I think we're good to go. So, fuel pump line. Here goes nothing. Pump is on. Started. I don't know if it has to relearn or anything. This thing has been not running for a long, long time. I don't know if I have one of those injectors that's cycling off and on, because it seems like it runs good and then it'll miss. Gear. I have to get underneath the truck and see what the deal is. I think this had a broken shifter cable from what I remember. So I think we tried to put it in neutral when I originally picked it up. But that's not good. Get out of there. Shows oil pressure. So the oil pressure is good. I may just have to get some fresh gas in this thing to get those injectors firing. Well, there you go. Oop, I was going to say the drive shaft is a spinning, so it's got to be in gear. Oh, you know what? I forgot to hook up the fuel pump. This thing's running on fumes. It might need a fuel pump. Let's do that. That's better. Okay, now we'll hit it. That's better. Yeah, keep her in gear. Good oil pressure. I like it. So I'm going to get underneath and try to put this in park and go from there. All right, just picked the truck up just to take a quick look. Initial inspection. Got a little bit of a drip here, and I have a transmission line with a crack in it, or probably rust. That's usually it. Right where the clip holds it to the engine, that's where they usually rot. So, and you can see it's loud because the cats are cut off. So, at least the oil pressure is good. Yep, here's the next issue. Shifter cable not connected. So, let's see which way is which. I think that's park. Let's see. Yep. All right, we're in park now. Let me see. I'll start it up and see if it likes to be in park better. Pretty amazing. Yeah, I mean she's not shaking or anything. Say we got 8. Pressure is like 60, almost 60 pounds. It's really good. Seems to stumble a little bit when you first hit it. Service engine lights on, probably because there's no cats on it. Charging system's working, so no, the alternator's good. 234,000 miles, perfect for a turbo. Sounds like it just needs to run a while. She's idling right down at 500. Could be a little bit of a skip. She's starting to get a little better now. Starting to clear up. I'll have to redo a compression test or not. See if anything improved. Sounds like it has a little bit of a skip there. Clears up once you get some revs in it. All right, I think that's enough for now. I am almost. Is the fuel situation here okay? I have to add some fuel. Get a little noisy. But it runs, so that's cool. That means it's time to get it out of this thing. So I got to pull the transfer case out. I'll do this easy or easier since I have it in here on the lift anyway. I'll pull the transfer case first, then I'll pull the transmission, and then I'll just pull the engine out as a unit because that's really all I want out of this truck right now. Everything else will just kind of get knocked out of the way, and if I can sell a few pieces off of it, that's fine, but this thing's getting scrapped real soon. So, see you on the next video. We're moving forward. Hooray. So I couldn't leave well enough alone, and because with the exhaust cut off, it's really hard to tell what's going on with the engine. I wanted to make sure there was no noises or anything, just to be safe before I move forward. So I I just stuck a couple of 2.5-inch turbo mufflers on the cut off pipes just to quiet it down enough to work. And the engine has a skip. I could tell. So the water test with the squirt gun went around again, and it's number 7. So
7 is the Skippy cylinder. Check for spark. I've got spark, even though it's kind of orangey with that crappy old plug, but you know, it should still hit. And I put a Noid light on the injector pulse, and I don't have a Noid light for that Delphi type connector. I have all the other ones you could think of, but I had to just kind of touch one to the connector, and the light flashed. You know, it's not real bright, but it flashed, so it's there. So, and I definitely have compression because I took the plug out and ran the thing with no plug in it, and you can hear the compression, so it's there. So I think that injector is just junk. I mean, it tested okay when I was messing with it, but something's going on, I believe, with that injector. When I pulled the plug out, there was nothing on it, so it wasn't like it was wet or anything. And again, when I did I did a spray test on the exhaust manifolds, you could tell that was the cylinder that wasn't hitting. All the others are burning the water off right away. So this is what it sounds like now with some mufflers on it. And hook up the fuel pump. All right, we got fuel. Fire it off. Do I have fuel? Now I have fuel. Okay. It runs good. Oil pressure is good. I let this thing run all the way up to temp, and I still had like 40 pounds of oil pressure when it was hot, all the way at temp. But it's got a skip. And it's number 7, I'm sure it is. So what I'm going to do is take the engine out, put it on a run stand. I have to make a standalone harness anyway. So I think I'm just going to put this on a stand, make a harness to run it by itself, standalone, and troubleshoot it on the stand, because it's a little more difficult to keep pulling this rail out in the truck because it's all behind the firewall. So it's easier just to have it on a run stand, and I can get a little look at it, what's going on with it. But at least the bottom end seems safe. So I don't have any rod knocks, main knocks, that kind of stuff. So I'm confident enough to move forward and get the engine out, get it running out of the truck, and go from there.